The story ends in someone's mouth, but it begins in a tiny village, more or less covered in snow. The snow had fallen during the long night, during which children had pressed their faces to the windows looking for a glimpse of a man who they suspected of bringing them wonderful gifts. But instead they heard a terrible noise from a certain cottage in the neighborhood arrondissement, a word which here means a place where something was being born. This cottage was already regarded with some suspicion, as it was the only place not decorated with flashing colored lights at this time of year. The thing that was being born was a latke, a word which here means potato pancake. Latkes are a traditional part of the celebration of Hanukkah, a holiday commemorating a miraculous Jewish military victory. Nearly everything in this world is born screaming, and the latke was no exception. Even though the latke wasn't conceived and born the way you and I were conceived and born, but instead was fashioned from grated potatoes, chopped onions, beaten eggs, and a dash or two of salt. Once these ingredients were properly mixed, the latke was slapped into a pan full of olive oil, heated to a very high temperature, and this is when it began to scream. The latke was suffering so much that it leapt out of the pan and out of the window of the cottage and began to run, screaming down the boulevard. This may seem like unusual behavior for a potato pancake, but this is a holiday story in which things tend to happen that would never occur in real life. The latke ran past a row of flashing colored lights which hung from the rain gutters of a less suspicious cottage.
It's all the rockets! We're the ones who are supposed to be dominating the neighborhood with our cheerful glow.
I was just thrown into a pan of boiling oil. Can you believe it?
Yes, but we can't imagine why.
Because I am a latke. The olive oil reminds us of the oil used to rededicate the temple following the defeat of Antiochus at the hands of the Maccabees. The oil was only supposed to last for one night, but there was a miracle, and it lasted for 8. Plus, frying makes my skin crispy and brown.
So, you're basically hash browns. Maybe you can be served alongside a Christian ham.
I am not hash browns. I am something totally, completely different. I.
Oh, the latke rounded the corner and found itself face to face with a candy cane, which wrinkled its red and white nose at the latke in distaste.
I'm trying to sprinkle the night air with my peppermint scent. Your mouth-watering smell, not to mention all that yelping, is spoiling the effect.
My mouth-watering smell is part of the cozy feeling of Hanukkah. It reminds us that things are better now than they were in 175 before the Common Era, when my people were not allowed to practice their religion. In order to study the Talmud, a book of history, they had to hide out in caves, and when they heard Greek soldiers approach, they pretended they were gambling with a small spinning top called a dreidel.
Sort of like Joseph and Mary hiding out in the manger? Someone should write a Christmas carol about you.
I am not part of Christmas. It's a totally different thing. I.
The screams of the latke grew quieter and quieter as the pancake ran out of the village. Its utter fury was unabated. a phrase which here means the Latka was still very annoyed at the objects to whom it had spoken. But it was quite tired, and so it decided to rest for a few minutes beneath the branches of a little pine tree. The pine tree was napping, but woke up at the sound of an object plopping down at its feet.
Are you a present? Presents are pretty much the only things that are allowed to sit beneath me during this time of year.
Presents aren't really a big part of Hanukkah. There's nothing wrong with giving gifts to loved ones, of course, but it's more important to light the candles for 8 consecutive nights to commemorate the miracle of the temple and the miracle of victory even when you are thoroughly outnumbered. So you shouldn't give up hope.
Plus, Santa Claus.
Oh, I'm too exhausted to scream anymore. No, look. Santa Claus is a nice guy, but has nothing to do with it. Christmas and Hanukkah are completely different things.
Well, but different things can often blend together. Let me tell you a funny story about pagan rituals.
But before the pine tree could begin its story, a family came trooping through the snow, searching the forest carefully.
We shouldn't have waited until the last minute to get ready for this holiday.
Said the father in the family who was holding the All right, okay,
We'll never find a good one.
You shouldn't give up hope, dear. Look over there.
It's perfect.
Such a marvelous shape.
And its skin is so crispy. We'll need to reheat it, of course, but this will be perfect for Hanukkah dinner, with a topping of applesauce, sour cream, or even jam.
I'll fry it in oil to remind us of the rededication of the temple.
In the triumph of the Maccabees over
Antiochus.
Antiochus.
Good job.
After hiding in cave all that time,
The father smiled down at the Latka in his mitten and then stared curiously at his other hand.
What was I thinking bringing this axe?
The family strolled back to the village, walking past all the cottages with flashing colored lights and smiling politely at the candy canes until they reached their own home. The family carried the Latka into their own home, which was warm and cozy, and sat down at the table, which was lit with flickering candles of a menorah or a Hanukkah, which is a branched candelabra designed specifically for this holiday.
It is very frustrating not to be understood in this world. If you say one thing and keep being told that you mean something else, it'll make you want to scream. But somewhere in the world, there is a place for all of us. Whether you are an electric form of decoration, a peppermint-scented sweet, a source of timber, or a potato pancake.
On a cold, snowy night, everyone and everything should be welcomed somewhere. And the Latka was welcomed into a home full of people who understood what a Latka is and how it fits into its particular holiday. And then they ate it.
Early in my ministry, I ministered to families entering hospice. And one particular visit, I was visiting with a grandmother who was entering hospice, and she was the matriarch of the family, and her family was all gathered with her. She was Jewish, and she was an observer of her traditions, very much devout. And then her only daughter married a man who was Catholic. So as we sat talking about this tender time, we also were nearing the holidays and began to speak about how they would observe the traditions during this time. Now, her daughter and her husband had given her a granddaughter who was at the time 7 years old and was playing nearby where we were talking, playing with toys, sitting in the floor. So as we talked about how they were going to celebrate the holidays in their blended family, all of a sudden the little girl jumped up with this look of wonder on her face and said, "Oh, I'm half Jewish, half Christmas." Now we can chuckle about that here, in this place where we welcome all people of every tradition and none into our journey toward truth and meaning in our lives. Here in this place, our Unitarian Universalist faith honors 7 principles and draws from 6 sources. The first, the direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder. The second, words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront power structures of evil with justice. Wisdom from the world's religions which inspire us in our spiritual and ethical lives. Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. And the spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life. It is the respect for all of these sources that keeps our free faith free in thought and in heart and in practice. We strengthen and deepen our faith through all of these sources at one time or another throughout any given year. But in the month of December here at River of Grass, we embrace all of them in a matter of days. Because with freedom comes responsibility. Responsibility to one another's search for truth and meaning. We are honor-bound to grow our understanding of each other's traditions and each other's search. Those of us who grew up with Christian Christmas are honor-bound to come to greater understanding about Hanukkah, not as if we are Jewish, we cannot be Jewish, but as students and as supplicants of the rich wisdom, the teachings and traditions of Judaism. And those among us who have had no connection to Christian traditions, or may still be dragging about baggage with Jesus' name on it, are also honor-bound to take the teachings of Christmas seriously. And that all of us must come to one another's traditions as open-minded and open-hearted as we can. So what does this story from Lemony Snicket and the Screaming Latka teach us in this season that we share? What questions does it ask of us? We can likely agree that the story's closing lesson that somewhere in the world there is a place for all of us, whether you are an illuminated form of decoration, a peppermint-scented sweet, a source of timber, or a potato pancake. Somewhere in the world, all should be welcomed on a snowy night or on a sunny Sunday morning. This is what we try to be here in this place every day, and what we try to build in our world. Strong, free thinking, healthy, deeply loving, diverse, and dynamic, beloved community. But then, we also find ourselves sometimes, at one time or another, like the characters in Lemony Snicket's story. Sometimes, some of us act like the glowing lights, sure that they're meant to dominate the neighborhood with their cheerful glow, but it takes all of us in turn learning to glow, to light the world. Or the candy cane, so focused on our own task and our own truth, we have trouble seeing or hearing anything or anyone else until someone helps us to see the ways and the truths of others. We've shared the Latkes struggle too. Frustrated, feeling not understood or not listened to at all until we want to scream. I dare say a great many of us found our way into this room too tired to scream anymore, yearning for a place that ourselves and our beliefs are welcome, and where we are not asked to leave behind our truth in order to belong. A place like Pine Tree promises, where different things can indeed learn to live together. In the coming days, we will celebrate Hanukkah, solstice, and Christmas. And each of them matters in and of themselves, and each of them also matters together and what they share. Every time we celebrate this season, we get better at it, at least in here. While outside our doors, religious rivalries yet threaten the justice and the peace and the love we would share to transform our world. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. Disdain for Islam is real. Some Christians feel disregarded, while people everywhere, people of color, gay, lesbian, trans, and genderqueer folk, immigrants, refugees, and the poor keep screaming like our Latka, trying to be heard over the walls of privilege still sustained by those among us who remain comfortably mainstream, unassailed, and unaware of our neighbors' struggles. The neighbors that we claim we would love as ourselves. But if we can learn in here to blend holidays and families and beliefs and ways of loving for ourselves and for our children, we can make the world around us more like in here, safer, more compassionate, kinder, more hopeful, more loving. In our story, Pine Tree never got to tell its truth of all the ways differences can become strengths. Perhaps that is because that part of the story is yet to be written. That's our work to do. And lest we feel it is more than we can do, let us remember that all of the traditions of this winter season teach us that the first and foremost thing we need to do to bring light in a world filled with darkness is light one candle. Let us go being light. Let us go making light. Let us go spreading light in a world waiting for light. Let's hold these things in our hearts as we rise in body or in spirit and sing together a song from the Hanukkah tradition, Rock of Ages.